Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We have a bunch of results over the past weekend, lots of JP events, and with the new set dropping in Japan, set 3, there's actually really spicy results. Gonna go through all of them, as well as some Springfest that happened as well, including Indonesia, the one that I participated in. If you guys need any coaching, Metafy link is in the bottom right hand corner. Feel free to book a session and we can get started. If you guys haven't already, click that subscribe button for all notifications on this channel. So starting off, we have the Bushiroad China League Season 1 in Taiyuan. So 2 Shiranuis, 2 Evas in the top 8, along with 1 Blankmeyer, Youthberg, Training Tools, and a Kyrie. Then the top 4, the whole event was taken by Kyrie. We're going to look at the list in just a sec. Pretty spicy list. Second place was Eva, third was Shiranui, and fourth is a Blankmeyer. So looking at the Kyrie list, I was looking and I was like, what does this deck actually do, right? So first of all, the first talking point is that it runs the Willista Ride Light, right? Which means that it finds the gem. You also run 4 of like the Tayfault clone, so to say. So essentially when you play a normal order, you can, when this unit is played, I can Soul Blast 1 top 5 for essentially a grade 2 or less, or your Vanguard grade or less, and call it to rearguard. But that's not all, right? You also play this grade 3 order. So the grade 3 order is rest 1 of your rearguards. You look at the top 5, I think, and then you pretty much call 1, right? So how does this act kind of work, right? So you're on Kyrie, you're using Yasmin to jump to grade 4. You also have this grade 3 where when it's placed, you obviously check the grade of your Vanguard or show a grade 4. Then you Counterbox 1, draw 1, and it gains +10, right? You also run the Prod of Greed order, so the new Regalis piece, which essentially says either play this and draw 2 or countercharge 1, right? So how is that good? Because then, you know, you're drawing 2, you're activating the effect for the grade 2. And the good thing about this other grade 2 is that at the end of turn for each, I think 2 grades of your Vanguard, you can choose to bounce or something like that. So essentially the card that you call gets bounced to your hand, which makes this deck extremely tanky, right? So then we have the grade 2. The grade 2 essentially says when your units are bounced, then you can Soul Blast 1 and restand the whole column. So you're essentially bouncing the 2 sides and then calling them, and then this column on this grade 2 essentially restands itself, right? And not only that, it gives your front row +5k, which means that automatically this dragon itself will hit for 28k unboosted, right? You also have the grade 2 EB3 essentially bounce, which is really strong. So essentially, you know, all of these cards essentially bounces you to hand. You just farm your field, bounce it back to hand, and you become super tanky, right? Along with the triple drive from Kyrie, just makes this deck really, really strong, right? 5 attack, big power, obviously with Yuika as well. With the +5 from the front row, you hit a couple fronts. This deck actually runs 3 heals and 1 blue OT, which is pretty funny. But I think the concept of this deck is that it's tanky, so it doesn't really need to heal at early stages. So because it's tanky, you always play with low damage and your opponent's always at higher damage, so heals aren't really effective. So you're actually pushing for more aggression in your other triggers. So substituting 1 heal for like a draw or front or a crit is more advantageous for this deck in its entirety, right? So yeah, very, like, how should I say, well experimented deck. I think this is probably a deck that I will pick up and kind of test. I think this deck has a lot of potential. And looking just at the concept of what this deck actually does, I think it's actually pretty promising. So yeah, very cool. Then jumping to Rosemont. So we have Springfest in Rosemont. So first team brought Luard, Prism, Shiranui, pretty sweaty lineup. Second place was Youthberg, Shiranui, and Luard. Again, another sweaty lineup. Maybe not the Youthberg, but Youthberg is still pretty good. Third, this third lineup's pretty cool. So Varga, Shiranui, and Ignis. And then fourth was Shiranui, Luard, and Varga, another sweaty lineup, right? So I think like the third deck is like, you know, you kind of pick and choose depending on your seat. So yeah, pretty normal. Our team pretty much brought something very similar, right? Then the tri-regulation. So the first team brought a V Fenrir. Wow, this is a deck we'll take a look at in just a sec. In the standard slot, brought Varga and then Kresnui. Second was Gurgut, Prism, and Highlander. Third brought Gurgut, Shunui, and Ghidorah. And then fourth brought Night Rose, Luard, and Katrina. So looking at the V Fenrir deck, it operates very similar to the premium Fenrir deck, where it capitalizes on Melissa. It's actually really good into Gurguts, because Gurgut, you know, calls a bunch, right? And you essentially have this, and you just flood, like your opponent floods their field, and you just pretty much deck them out, right? So pretty interesting counter to Gurgut, and you know, I respect it. I think it's a pretty cool concept. But yeah, you know, I'm not too sure whether I'd be comfortable enough to play this deck unless like I had crammed heaps of hours into this deck. I heard this player really likes Fenrir, so you know, big shout out to him. Much respect for playing the deck that he loves. So yeah, very cool. Then looking at WGP Season 1 in Korea, so the top 8 consisted of 2 Shunui, Raziel, and Blangmai, and then 1 Prism and Luard. Then the top 4, first and second, were both taken by Shunui. Third was Raziel, and then fourth was Prism. And then jumping to the newer side of things, that is WGP Season 1 in Nagoya. So looking at the pie chart, 10 Shunuis. So out of the top 16 teams, 10 teams brought Shunui. Shunui is just still good as ever, even with the OT ban, even with the ride line nerf. It's still a very, very strong deck, and probably a mainstay for a long time, right? Obviously, without Drag Vader, there's no auto win button anymore, but it's still a really strong deck, but a lot of decks can contend to it, right? Then we had 3 Chaos, wow, and then like a bunch of like one-offs in every other department, right? Then the winning team brought Morphonica, Eva, and Shunui. Second brought Chaos, the Dark States Vispo, and then Tamayura, which is pretty interesting. Vispo getting its first top immediately out of the set. And then this third team brought Raziel, Venus Lukia, and Shunui. Big respect to this Venus Lukia player. We'll take a look at the deck in just a sec. And then fourth place brought Herminia, Blangmaya, and Chaos. So this Venus Lukia deck, I made a whole X thread on this and kind of how the deck and the concept I thought would work. But I guess this deck was built slightly different. I think it's like really aggressive, a really aggressive approach, right? So you have like, you're obviously running the Silverthorn ride line, playing 3 Venus for Persona Ride, 4 of the Dragon. It's a mainstay, really strong. Being able to fetch any card from drop to into soul is really strong, because if you're, you know, soul blasting stuff or overplacing stuff is really good, right? You can also, like, you know, keep recycling this to deck in your deck, which makes it even better. You're playing 2 Venus, 2 original Lukia just for the 5k buff. Pretty much after that, this card is useless. 4 Toe to be able to find your Lukia and your attacking order, which is the multi-attack order. Playing 4 Rising Dragon, the strongest attacker in your deck. Playing 4 Jovial Juggler. I think this is correct. I found in my initial testing that anything less than 4 is literally suicide, right? This card can be called as a 0, but it can also be called as a 1. So you can actually play both of them. Call the Dragon puts in something, Jovial puts in, puts out, Dragon puts something in again, Jovial again, puts the Jovial in and calls something else out, like a Bubetsu or something, right? So I think Jovial, too good of a card not to run, and I think it's a 4-off, right? Just being able to see it is really strong. Then you play 4 Bubetsu, pretty much your 5th attack extender, being able to just, you know, eat up 2, restand 1 with Rising Dragon, and the attacking order, and then you use Bubetsu, counter +1, call 1 out. And funnily enough, this deck actually, you know, like generates a lot of soul, because you just like suck everything in. The Dragon puts in stuff, Rising Dragon puts in stuff, so you actually get a lot of soul, so you actually fulfill the second part of the ability. So, you know, you call 1, counter +1, 10 or more soul, draw 1. So you actually replenish the card in your hand, which is pretty good. Then looking at the triggers, you run pretty much 3 draw, 1 red OT being the offensive OT for this deck. I think this deck really needs an offensive push to bring it, you know, up a tier higher. I think this deck is a very glass cannon-y deck. It's not a really tanky deck, so you pretty much from the get-go just bash and yeah, you know, go full face, right? Playing 4 of the attacking order, 1 of the Quake, Blitz order, Regalis, and then the new Elementaria for is it Crest decks? So yeah, pretty cool inclusion. So yeah, that's the Venus Lukia deck. Very, very cool to see Venus Lukia getting its first top on the JP side, pretty much straight out of the boost box, right? Then looking at Block B, so this one is less Shunui-ish. So 7 Shunui, 6 Varga, 4 Eva, 3 Luard, and then 2s and 1s of a bunch of everything else. Then in the top 4, first was the Darkseid's Vispo again with Shunui and Eva. Second was Shunui, Jet and Eva. Third was Prison, Dayusha and Shunui. And fourth was Varga, Mygo, and Dayusha. So the 2 Dayushas that made it into the cut made it 3rd and 4th, which was really, really cool to see. So we'll look at one of them. So this is pretty much the deck that was played by the 3rd place Dayusha. Pretty much you're playing like, you know, all of the D-Robos except for Die Dragon. You only need to run 2. You have 1 from the right line, 1 in your deck. You play 4 Die Lady, probably the best card released for D-Robo, or at least the set itself. You're playing 1 Mariner, 3 Battles, and then pretty much a bunch of Cyclers. So this Cycler allows you to essentially find stuff from your soul and add it to hand. Which means that you can actually recycle like ladies. If you find it like an order in your soul, you grab back to hand. This as well finds your persona rides or finds your set orders, adds it to hand. This one's pretty interesting. So it uses the PR pretty much after boost, put it into soul and counter charge 1. So I guess this deck runs a lot of cards that uses CB. And then this card as well, pretty much top 5 for a set order, add it to hand. So a lot of ways to kind of find your base, because the base is essentially the engine of the deck. And then playing Chalice as the Regalis piece makes pretty, you know, it makes sense. Let's just put it that way, right? So yeah, that's the Dayusha deck. Very cool to see. Again, you know, just like Venus Lukia, really cool to see Dayusha straight out of the box getting 3rd and 4th at WGP Nagoya. Really, really cool. Then jumping to Springfest Indonesia, this is the event that I participated in, came 2nd both days, and as you can see, WCC, Kira, Jesus, Yamato, if you guys you know, are Gundam fans, you guys would know. So the first team that beat us brought Luard, Leonon, and Shunui. The Leonon was really strong, really hard to kind of deal with the early game. So yeah, big respect to that person. I think I had my revenge match in day 2 exactly against this team, and I beat him. So, you know, 1-1. Maybe we'll get a rematch again sometime very, very soon. So very cool. So congratulations on first. Second was our team. So we brought Kelvin on Mygo, myself on Shirunui, and then we're at on Luard. We'll take a look at some of the decks in a sec. Third was Haptism's team. So another WCC member. He took Luard and an insane 10-0 record all the way to 3rd place. Like, that reminded me of my 10-0 run back in 2022, where I went 10-0 with Magnolia Elder and came 2nd, right? That's pretty much what he felt, right? His team brought Magnolia, Elder, and Prism, which is pretty wild, I'm not gonna lie. And then 4th place was Varga, Luard, and Shunui. So just looking at the Luard deck that we are brought, thanks for the cards, Anto and Daddy Dao, I win. I don't know about that. He did really well, I gotta say. Like, I anticipated a poorer score than 8-2, so he did really well. So this deck is Biscotti based, so no Tayfault, no Wisdom Order, and I think it's very stable. Biscotti, if you apply the same, I guess, logic as my Drag Raider Full Heart, it's a 0-card guard mechanic, which is really strong. Allows you to play the grade 2 game really easily, especially with this thing. Sir Gawain makes this deck really strong. You don't have to expend it early. You can just keep it on the field. Your opponent can't get rid of it. It's just an eternal 13k booster. You can sack it whenever you want. You still play like a other bunch of stuff for like, you know, Drag Strider. So you still play your one Luminosity Wizard for the Drag Strider big booster. You still play, you know, Semius to build a board early. You still play your 4 Abyssal Elves for counter charge. You play 1 cat. This cat actually, I think, came up a few times. Just 20k shield is really good. And he put in this heal order, which is wild. So you can play it, discard a card, and then choose one of your units being attacked, and it gets 5k until the end of battle. Then choose up to 4 cards with heals from your drop and column. And funnily enough, there was one game where I turned to Wirab and I saw him guard with 4 heals, which was pretty funny, which is like 65k shield. So this card is actually a perfect guard in itself, right, in the later games. So yeah, very cool to see. Really proud of, you know, how this team performed, coming second place after 10 rounds day one, and then coming second place, you know, after another 10 rounds, so 20 rounds, coming second place both days, which is very, very consistent in multiple formats, right? So looking at obviously the tri regulation, so the first team, the team that beat us as well, so their team brought Gurgit, Luard, and Eradicators. Second was us, so Kelvin Galini brought Nat Rose, his true mainstay. I brought Mygo, and I brought Katrina. Third was Binance Springfest S2, brought Gurgit, Shunui, and Jovius Davis. That was a pretty big surprise, not gonna lie. And then fourth place, the Antos. This was Yovan's team and Ilum. They brought Gurgit, Shunui, and Vowing Vanquisher. So looking at some of these decks, I guess. So the first one being Galini's deck. So Wira forced me to play this format, and he absolutely did. But there are things that really separate really good Night Rose players and just your average Night Rose players, like being able to stay at specific damage at certain points of the game, especially in the mirror, and knowing how to play the mirror just shows, you know, your expertise as the Night Rose player. This deck runs 2 C Strong and Banshee, which we don't usually see in a V premium deck, and only playing 2 Navigators. Just really solid stuff, right? 1 draw PG, being able to fish it with like Greed Shade, and only playing 1 Greed Shade to find space for other things in the deck. But otherwise, like, this deck is just really straightforward and really well piloted by someone who knows Grand Blue inside and out. So yep, big shout out again to Galini. OP teammate, that's all I gotta say. And another OP teammate is Wirab. So he played Katrina, enjoyed playing V, Kelvin Galini, hee. Yeah, so he definitely enjoyed playing V. Yeah, you know, totally. So his deck on Katrina is very different. So he's focused on Inez, and I think Inez being a card that can gain power is really strong, right? So what you can do is essentially Rain Breath Dragon into something like Inez, into something else, into a plant token, right? Which essentially gets you plus 15k, so it's a 28k base Vanguard. Additionally, it's a really strong beat stick, so if you call this off of Katrina, it actually becomes really big. And then pretty much everything else is kind of like what you would see in like a normal Katrina deck. So your 2 Enlargolf, 4 Enelmas, 2 Sylvias, so that you can find it in the early game, especially if you're striding into Arboreus. 1 Maiden Sweetberry. The Soul Charge one actually does come up from time to time, only playing 3 Honolly. I find that 3 Honolly is enough in, you know, certain environments, and I don't think there were many Crest Nuis that day either. So I'm not too sure how many he actually played into, but yeah, didn't really see many. Substituted one of the Stoicair draws for is that the pineapple guy? Yeah, he's a pineapple, right? The Intersalt plus 10k, but otherwise everything else is, you know, kind of standard. Looking at the G zone, nothing has really changed. 3-2 G guards, pretty much everything that you would normally see in a Katrina deck. But yeah, just well piloted the whole day, really, really strong. I think he went like 9-1 or something like that, which was ridiculous. So yeah, really close to 10-0, lost to NLK. Yeah, and like masterclass, absolute masterclass. So big shout out to Wirab, my second OP teammate. Then looking at the Jovius Davis deck, this one is pretty wild. So you're playing, you know, G Davis, searchable off your Nikki, and then you're playing Jovius as, I guess, a finisher potentially. If you're playing the grade 2 game, you still have Lambros to ride down. You're playing Saberflow because you can ride up to G Davis and just farm a bunch. You're playing one of the grade 1 heal. Diantha can call, you know, Saberflow Sailor again to draw. This deck actually draws a bunch without needing to, you know, expend Coral Salts, because Coral Salt is like a very, very valuable, I guess, rearguard attacker. And then, yeah, just a bunch of like other really good stuff. Playing 2 Honolly, I guess, is pretty interesting, especially in an environment where, you know, a lot of multi-attack decks or decks that, you know, actually counters deck really hard, plays a lot of, you know, multi-attack stuff. You can just limit that for 1 turn, just get some breathing room, and then essentially win, right? 1 Spiritual Body Condensation, pretty much the same application as Diantha, being able to call out stuff from the bin. Bracing Angel Ladder just stops your whole board from being nuked, which is really cool. And then pretty much the G-Zone of pretty much every Aqua Force deck in existence, right? So yeah, very cool to see Thavis still at it. And then this is Jovan's list, playing Vowing Eradicators, playing one of the D grade 3, which essentially binds the bin, and then Vowing Saber to, you know, clean up the board, restand a bunch, just normal Erad stuff. Nothing has really changed. But otherwise, yeah, very, very strong showing throughout BSF Indonesia. So that's pretty much all the results from this weekend. I think I missed out the Germany results, but that will come very, very soon from Fuzzy. So big shout out to Fuzzy again for pretty much all of the information, the info god of Vanguard. If you guys haven't checked out already his website, I put the link in the description. Feel free to check his site out. It is a godsend of a place. I go there all the time for all my lists. So yeah, check it out. If you guys like this video, pop a like, comment down below what you guys think of all the results over the past weekend. If you guys had any spicy decks to, you know, comment about, feel free to let me know in the comments. And if you guys haven't already, click that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.